I think the job of a CEO should be about putting all your attention on your team, along with setting the strategy. Your job as a CEO, at least what I've always believed when I was CEO, is I would obsess over my team, making sure they were really clear with where we were going, making sure they had the resources, the tools, anything they needed to be successful. Because when you empower them and you allow them to grow and you allow them to make mistakes, it's okay. As long as it's a learning opportunity, you're going to find that you'll be able to scale so much faster.
Welcome to the Great Talent, Great Business Podcast, your go-to resource for building exceptional teams and thriving businesses. Each episode delivers actionable insights on harnessing offshore talent, integrating innovative technology, cultivating a vibrant company culture, and attracting and retaining top performers. Subscribe now to never miss an episode. For more resources, visit greattalentpodcast.com. where you can download this episode's free worksheet designed to help you apply today's insight to your business. And now, here's your host, Rob Levin.
Today, I'm joined by Jennifer Berkowitz, an expert in scaling a business from the ground up without losing your mind in the process. Through her work at R&J Advisory Group and the Freedom Goal Group, she helps CEOs and leadership teams grow with more profit and less stress. Wouldn't that be nice? I'm so excited to have you here, Jen. Let's just jump right in.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Rob. We've known each other for a bazillion years, so I was very much looking forward to hanging out with you today.
For the listeners and the viewers, Jen and I go back at least 20 years. She had a really successful technology company, which she had a terrific exit. And as I mentioned now, is helping many businesses with so many growth-related challenges. So perfect guest to have on the Great Talent, Great Business Podcast. Jen, in your work with small and mid-sized businesses, what are some of the key growing pains that you see over and over again? Well, let's just start there, and then I'll have a follow-up question.
Yeah, I feel like just that question alone, I could probably spend hours explaining all the issues with that. I think one of the fundamental issues that I see when a company is scaling is that they're not staying in alignment with where are we going? The fundamental question is, okay, what do we look like, let's just say 6 months, 1 year from now? And while the executive team might be clued in on that, if I were to go to anyone's office and ask the rest of the company, okay, what does your business look like at the end of the year? Usually the answer is, oh, go ask the CEO. And I think when that happens, we're losing a huge profit opportunity and a huge, everything opportunity, because the problem with that is that if people don't know where they're going and they're just going into the office every day doing their daily grind, A, it's not very exciting. B, like I said, you're losing out on a bigger opportunity, because when that person understands the bigger picture and how their role can fit into it, they might change what activities they're working on in order for the company to achieve the goal. So I just think it's a huge missed opportunity that I see probably 100% of the time.
Yeah. So natural follow-up question. What you're talking about is cascading the mission, the goals, not only cascading it down to the workforce, but also making sure they understand what their role is in that. What are the best ways that the business owner, CEO, as well as the rest of the leadership team can do that, can convey that message? And how often should they be doing that?
Yeah. So the way I like to start first is, even before cascading the messaging, is just understanding for each person, there's kind of a two-part to it. One is obviously, where are we going? But two is, why should that person get paid? What are their own individual scorecards? How do they even know what they should be even focusing on, so that whatever those initiatives are, they know how it ties into what they should be doing on a daily basis? One of the first things I like to do with teams is work on what we call a function accountability chart. It's coming from the Scaling Up methodology from Verne Harnish. And it's a very, very robust tool, because it not only will help us to understand who owns what, but why should they get paid? And then we can start to look at, okay, if this is what everyone's accountable for, okay, now where are we going with this? And then as far as cascading it, the functional accountability chart, I think, needs to be looked at least probably every 6 months at a minimum. As far as the overarching goals, I usually like to start with teams with what I call a painted picture, which is a 3-year roadmap, a visualization of what do you look like? Because I think too often you just got to get visual. What do we look like? And then from there, then it's easy to figure out what those 3-year, 1 year, next quarter, those initiatives need to be. And then from there, we need to break it down into even down to the week level, who's doing what. And that needs to be communicated weekly, not even just on a quarterly basis. Like, where are we? How are we doing with everything? And that's where important meeting rhythms come in. I think too often again, another missed opportunity, especially with remote teams, of keeping that structure strong, because when you're remote, it's very easy to be hidden.
Yeah, I want to jump back into remote in a
Yeah.
minute or two. Let's just talk about the business owner, right? Usually the CEO. What is the biggest mind shift that you see that they need to make in order to really have the right mindset to be in growth mode and to make it a reality?
Well, they need to stop feeling like they need to be the hero. It doesn't work that way. I always say if you're pulling your team, first of all, it's never going to work. So I think so often people say, "Oh, I don't have the right team members. I don't have the right team members and I can't find good people." I think they need to shift their mindset. I think there are a lot of really great people out there. They're just not given the right tools to be successful. And part of that is not being clear with where are you going. And so what happens a lot of times is the CEO gets mad at their leadership team for not doing whatever he or she wants them to do, but in reality, the CEO needs to take a second look at what they're doing, which is what's causing all of these issues to happen. So the mindset is first, it's not about being a hero. In fact, you should be the exact opposite. You should be focusing. I think the job of a CEO should be about putting all your attention on your team, along with setting the strategy. Your job as a CEO, at least what I've always believed when I was CEO, is I would obsess over my team, making sure they were really clear with where we were going, making sure they had the resources, the tools, anything they needed to be successful. Because I think when you empower them and you allow them to grow and you allow them to make mistakes, it's okay. As long as it's a learning opportunity, you're going to find that you'll be able to scale so much faster. Because here's the thing, we're all locked arm in arm as a team. Some team members may be crawling, some may be sprinting, but we've got to, whether we like it or not, we're holding arm in arm. So we have to, as a CEO, we have to teach, how do we empower them? How do we get them so that they're all sprinting?
I love how you started this response with stop being the hero.
Oh,
You know,
it's
it's almost like a drug, right? You just want to feel like you want that feeling of, oh, I fixed another thing today. And by the way, I used to be like that, of course.
we all did.
And it's so powerful when you're like, wow, stuff's just getting done. And it also reminds me of telling my team, like, hey, I work for you guys. I'm here to help guide you and get you the right resources and the tools and the processes to make it all work. That don't be the hero mindset
No.
is so powerful.
In fact, the best thing you can do as a CEO, because I think too often CEOs feel like they need to have the answers to everything because they'll feel insecure some way if they don't. What I teach my CEOs to do is stop answering for everyone. Instead, just say, help me to understand what you think it's going to be. Like, give me ideas yourself. I think the best way you can figure that out is go away for a week. When I learned it myself is when I had my first child. I was literally in the delivery room and realizing that my team, they needed to perform without me. And that was the first real big opportunity. I realized, you know what? They want to grow. They want to take responsibility. I was probably pushing them down to a certain extent, not realizing it and trying to control the situation. And you can only control so much because you can control $1 million business, but I tried to do that when you're 10 million, 100 million, it's not going to work. I work from startups to companies doing hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'm telling you, you're never going to scale unless you empower your team to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And by the way, you'll actually have so much less stress.
Oh my
Couldn't
God.
agree. It's really amazing.
If I could just add one thing that I think will
Yeah,
help with the
please.
stress level is one of the biggest reasons why I think CEOs also have so much stress is because of the anxiety of the unknown. And the reason why is because they don't really know how things are going. And I think there's a huge flaw out there with a lot of methodologies and just systems out there where if I look at, and this has been 100% of the time for the last 11 years of me coaching, is I'll look at a corporate dashboard where you have all your metrics in and it's
Right.
missing so much because usually what I'll just see is just sales, marketing, maybe some finance numbers. And a lot of them are like what I call lagging indicators where you can't really do much with them. They're just there like revenue. And the problem with that is that it doesn't give you a sense of what's going on. And so for that reason, that's what partially causes that stress because they can't really forecast what's happening in the business and how their team is actually doing. So that's one of the first things that I look at and I tend to rip apart, sorry, but I do because it's not the right dashboard. And people say, what do you mean by leading and lagging indicators? What does that all mean? And my best example, one of my colleagues in scaling up said this, and I thought it was the greatest example. If you get on a scale this morning and you see your weight, that's a lagging indicator. Nothing you can do with your weight. But
Right.
if you were to start tracking, let's say, your calories that you're eating, or maybe you start tracking your exercise minutes. Well, the hope is that if you, let's say, decrease your calorie load or you increase your exercise minutes, ultimately it should change the ultimate number the next time you get on the scale. Those calories burned, exercise minutes, those are leading indicators. The scale, that's your lagging indicator. And I think too often companies, and the way you can know is that if you can't have a conversation around that number, like revenue, then again, you're looking at the wrong numbers. And that's what causes stress in companies. There's a lot of things that causes stress. And my job is to remove all that to make it so easy for a CEO to have a real understanding of where we're going, how we're going to get there, and to eliminate all of that stress.
Yeah. Another way to think about this, when you get your monthly financials
Mhm.
from your bookkeeper or whoever, it should be anticlimactic. You should kind of already know
Yeah,
what those numbers are going to look like. Yeah.
totally. And that's what's missing, I think, in, like I said, 100% of the time, I have yet to see a dashboard that is completely complete. And if your audience thinks if anyone has a perfect dashboard, I'd love to see it because, like I said, I have yet to see it, whether it's a startup, hundreds of millions of revenue, they're all missing major metrics that really tell you the true story of what's happening in your business.
Yeah. Ours is always a work in progress. Every quarter, we're making little adjustments. Let's talk. You mentioned remote and hybrid teams earlier. What are some of the challenges when it comes to leading remote and hybrid teams that you see a lot? Because I'm guessing a fair amount of your clients are either remote or hybrid, like Work Better Now clients obviously are at least hybrid.
Yeah. What I'm noticing is it's definitely becoming at least a hybrid. And part of that is because I got an amazing EA rock star from your organization that if Elvie's listening, she knows I tell her all the time how much
Shameless
I
plug,
love
right?
her. She's the greatest. But it's happening more and more often where we're combining the people on site with the near shore support. So with the question, is the question you're asking like how is it changing or how do you support it when you're
What
dealing
are
with
some of the biggest challenges when it comes to leading people who are not in the office?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to some of the things I said earlier. Culture isn't just something that's forced. You really need to help your team understand your purpose. For me, when I had my online data backup company, it wasn't about backup. It was about the idea of protecting companies and their employees. And I think whether you're remote, whether you're on site, people need to understand why. Why is this company so important? It shouldn't just be a job for them. It should be a true purpose that's something that they're aligned with. So it starts with getting clear with that. The other thing that's really important is accountability, is getting really clear on, again, who's doing what and making sure that the meeting rhythms are moving really well. There's a huge problem out there with everyone complains about their meetings, and especially for remote teams, that's their way of connecting. But that doesn't create culture. Just being on a Zoom call doesn't create culture. You really have to create a system around it to really build that culture. But even the meeting rhythms, what's the purpose of that meeting? Do we have a clear agenda? Without that, what's the point of it? And then the remote people feel even more remote because of that, because there's no real connection. So there needs to be a lot of different connection points with culture, with our core values. How are people showing up? How are you using the core values in your language? It should be part of your DNA, not just something that's up on a wall that people stare at. It really needs to be unique and how you work with your teams, remotely or on site.
We are taking a quick break to tell you about something that you're going to want to sign up for. You know, if you look back, you'll see pivotal shifts in talent just about every 25 years or so. And companies that capitalize on these shifts end up jumping light years ahead of the competition. And right now, we're smack in the middle of one of those big shifts. And as a listener of the Great Talent, Great Business podcast, I want to make sure you have every advantage in your business. So that's why I'd like to invite you to join me on Tuesday, June 10th at 11 a.m. Eastern for a live session called The 25-Year Talent Shift, How the Smartest Business Owners Are Winning. We're going to cover what's actually happening in the shifting labor market, why leadership strategies and tactics that were effective just a few years ago no longer work, and how you can actually build your dream team right now. Plus, there will be a live Q&A at the end. To register, go to workbetternow.com/register. Again, that's workbetternow.com/register, and I'll see you live on June 10th. Now let's get back to this week's episode.
You mentioned scaling up. You're a scaling up coach. We run on EOS, similar but different systems. And I can't imagine that we would have gotten, when I say we, Work Better Now, would have gotten to where we are today without some sort of system that has that meeting cadence of going over those KPIs, discussing the issues.
100%.
And then add to that, we have a weekly all hands meeting, and we have something called the W Awards where we're recognizing people, and it has to be tied into our core values. So
Bingo.
we're always reiterating that, and we're telling stories of customers and our certified professionals.
Yep.
And it's all the things that you're talking about that you're helping your clients with. It's extremely powerful.
Yeah, you need some
Yeah.
kind of a system. I don't care what kind of system you start with, just do something. But
Yeah.
here's the thing, everyone needs to be an alignment for it. Because just because the CEO wants to do it, you're never going to get buy-in. Everyone needs to understand, again, the true purpose. Why are we doing this? What's in it for them? And I know it sounds so corny, but it really is important. If they're not aligned with what you're doing, whether you're putting in a system, whether you're going scaling 10x, it doesn't matter. And that's where I think gamification also comes in. Why should they care? There should be rewards. There should be celebrations for every part of it. That's what makes life fun. And that's what makes, where you don't feel like you're working. You're really, truly being a part of something bigger.
Thank God it's Monday. Right.
Yeah, I think within reason, yes.
You mentioned earlier, you were talking about the workforce and you said that, look, most people really want to make an impact. They want to be a part of something. And I'm using my words, not yours. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. How does an owner or any member of the leadership team know when somebody isn't the right fit in an organization? What are some of the signs? And then what do you do about it?
Well, it's usually one of two reasons. Either they're not hitting their metrics or they're not aligning with the core values. It's usually one of those two reasons.
Right.
And how do you know? I love looking at a talent assessment chart where one part of your access is the core values and one part is your productivity. In fact, I usually tease, I actually have this little picture. I use this all the time with people. I don't know if you can see this. It's my little ugly picture, but it's funny that you brought this up because I've had this from the other day. This is your core values. This is productivity. Right. And the thing is that your A players are your people that believe in it, right? I know I'm seeing this backwards. But the thing is that if you have people that are not being productive and they're not adhering to your values, what the heck are you doing? Like literally what day today are you letting them go? Because I can assure you, they are wasting your time, they are wasting your energy, and they are wasting your profit margins. The problem, the really danger zone is over here because your A players, they're great. We want to continue to retain them. The B players, the reality is that if they're adhering to your values, but they're not that productive, the goal should be that you shouldn't keep them more than 6 months in that spot. And here's the fun part. Sometimes they're the right person in the wrong seat. I actually once had this is a really funny story. I once had two co-founders. They were literally in the wrong seat. They didn't realize it. They came in, they asked me to come in to help them. I looked at the two of them. I'm like, you guys are in the wrong seat. Like literally one person should be running engineering. The other person should be doing sales and marketing. I said, well, you trust me? 3 months, just swap. So they took the chance, they swapped. We redid a lot of things. And then they went from 3 million to 9 million to 15 million. And then I think they recently just got a $60 million deal. Like they're off to the races now. So sometimes you just may have the right person in the wrong seat. The danger zone is right here because people who are really talented, but they're not adhering to your values, usually it could be one of two reasons. One is they used to be a great person, loved your values, but because you're tolerating C players, they don't care anymore. Or B, they could be going through something really awful and like a divorce or something, and they've got the glossy eyes going to work every day. But the key is, how do you know? You assess it, right? You have to sit down. You have to find out what's going on. And if they aren't the right fit, you've got to let them go. Absolutely let them go. Because if you don't expect to scale up. The really toxic people that don't believe in your values, they need to go first because they are just cancer to your organization.
That you are what you tolerate. You're sending a message to the rest of the team, and your A players don't want to be working with them.
One of the things that I tell clients, like when they come to me, I've been very lucky. All my business comes from client referrals, but I warn them. I said, look, if you're going to work with me, be prepared because you might have to slow down to speed up because you might be tolerating people in your organization that are giving you the revenue you need, but they're completely toxic and they're actually holding you back. We may need to look at that and assess what's going on with your team. We may need to slow down. We may need to look at, if you're running on water, we need to start running on concrete, start looking at everything that you're doing so that later on you can become that hockey stick and massively scale. But you have to be willing to make those decisions.
Very powerful. Do you find that most of your clients, when you say, hey, I know these people are performing really well, but they can't be here any longer, how is that message received?
It depends. Sometimes it's their best friend from childhood that they've had forever. That's usually, it's like the what got you here ain't going to get you there mindset. Look, it happens. The reality is I can't tell clients what to do. They ultimately have to make the decision. All I can do is share, here's what's happening. You decide what you want to do with it. However, there have been teams where it's obviously clear they have the wrong team and they don't want to make tough decisions. And ultimately, I don't want to be there. I feel very fortunate that I don't have to work. I had a great exit financially, but I hated business retirement. So for me, if it's not a good fit, I'm not going to stay. And I make it very clear to them. I know who I'm a great fit for, but if you're willing to keep toxic people around, this doesn't align with me. And I wish you all the best, but let's call it a day because it's just not of interest for me. And what's interesting is that if you look at all of my clients that had the doubled, tripled, 15x, I mean, like crazy stories, the fundamental scenario, the thing that happens that's across the board, across that for all of them is all the same, having the right people in the right seats doing the right things right with a very clear strategy and all being in absolute alignment, that's what happens. Fascinatingly enough, business isn't like crazy difficult. It's a matter of staying focused. And I think focus is a difficult thing. Over communicating, being transparent, and building an amazing culture. And if you get the right people in the right seats doing the right things right, get your seatbelt on.
Yeah. Several companies ago.
You've always been a rock star.
Well, that company, though, we didn't have great core values. We didn't kind of had a mission. And that was all on me, by the way. I had some good members of the team, but I never really focused on the culture. Very different now with Work Better Now with my partner, Andrew. We focused on values and culture. Day one, coming up with the idea in a bar, we literally talked about core values right then and there. And, it only took off from there. Jen, this has been awesome. Where can people find out more about you, R&J Advisory, and the Freedom Goal Group?
Yeah, so I do free trainings every once in a while online. I have another one coming up, a 2-day boot camp on how to become an order taker in 2025, about how to differentiate in your strategy. That's going to be on June 18th and 19th at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The way you can learn more is go to freedomgoalgroup.com. It's Freedom Goal, like a soccer goal, Freedom Goal Group, all one word.com. And that's where you can find my ongoing trainings. You can see new academies that we're launching. I have some online academies for those that want to be in more of a cohort with other companies. I have private coaching, but you can find it all at freedomgoalgroup.com.
Awesome, Jen.
And I'm on social media all the time giving crazy tips and tricks. So if you like that, just go scale up with Jen on TikTok and Instagram and the rest.
Yeah, and follow Jen also on LinkedIn. I do, and her content's fantastic.
Thanks.
Jen, thanks again, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, Rob. Good to see you.
Thanks for listening. The Great Talent, Great Business podcast is brought to you by Work Better Now. Don't forget to review, subscribe, and download the worksheet for this episode at the link below. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on LinkedIn at Great Talent, Great Business, or visit greattalentpodcast.com.